Hi everyone. Hi everyone. Welcome back to our latest episode of the Growth Playbook with myself, Kim Clark, and my dad, Alan Beaulieu. Today we are carrying on with our theme of last week where we were doing a brief recap of 2025 and then talking about some major events, if you will, or technologies and just industries of opportunity for the future. And today we're honing in a bit more and being more focused on 2026. I believe, Dad, last week when we ended, you said just some darker things for us to be talking about during today's episode. And then I chimed in with also looking forward to how can we take lessons we've learned from the past or potential missed opportunities that we've experience from the past and apply them to our 2026 planning. So, Dad, great to see you.
Good to see you again this week, and hopefully we'll be able to help our listeners, our friends, do wonderful things in the year ahead. I mean, January's already flying by. It's just incredible.
Almost Valentine's Day.
That's right. We may live through the winter. How about if we start with the broader theme of the economy, and I think this will lead into things from 25 that can help us in 26, that sort of thing. And we can make some past to future lessons and that and whatnot. Uh, the source for this is the Visual Capitalist, and they're talking about consensus forecasts. And I just want to say I happen to agree with their consensus forecast that the macroeconomic environment will see a soft landing in 2026, which here's the important part. A macroeconomic soft landing is not ubiquitous. Some of our listeners are going to have a fantastic can't keep up year, and others are going to have a worse than soft landing as their markets actually turn negative because a soft landing is in between the two. So it's imperative that people find out where they are. But since we can't answer that question now, the thing is, all right, business leader, look at your business in the last soft landing. So 2025, first half of the year was certainly soft, and some markets went down, some went up. Look at your business and say, how did I do in 2025? Because in that softish environment, if that continues into 2026, that's likely how you're going to do again. So you're going to have to say, all right, I wasn't ready, and therefore I got hurt this way. So now you have time to say to yourself, I got to fix that, or if you've already found the fix, I can't change that. I got to stay with this fix until things start getting better. Does any of that make sense? It's just
It did. I'm just trying to think of like how timing plays in that. So if we're saying there's a soft landing in 2026, then that's likely leading a lot of, I'll just stay focused on like my smaller circle and clients and stuff like that. So I'm just thinking like if somebody is still crawling out, say they're in phase A and they're still crawling out of a recessionary period because of how the last cycle impacted them, what could somebody potentially expect? A repeat of that in 2026, where they might experience that recovery slows and turns back into a recessionary period?
probably more like stay in a phase A, then enter into a weak B, a low growth in B. A lot of that's going to be dependent upon the company and what they do. And I don't mean this to be negative, but it's easy to sit back and go, this is happening to me. There's another thing to lean into it and go, the heck with this. What are we going to do? And you got to lean into it and go, all right, what's the message going out? And where aren't I that I should be? And where did we screw up last year and make sure that we don't do it again? How did we miscommunicate and keep from doing that again? Learn from your mistakes, and 10% of your business did really well, should already be leaning more into that 10% of the business, are you? Instead of saying, well, that's just a small part of my business. How do I make it a bigger part of my business? And ask yourself those questions. That's a lot of your market research part of marketing. And it's also how you get the message out. What is my market? How is my market doing? And what are the price points and all the rest of that? That gives you an advantage even in a soft landing. You can find at a soft landing, you see your competitors running out of cash because they're planning on something different, and you are generating more growth than they are. It's just knowing that it's a mild breeze, so you have to adjust the sails for a mild breeze and head in that direction at a less than breathtaking speed, but nevertheless you're moving forward and you're creating something. Um,
Yeah, I like it. And partly what I heard in that too is ensuring creativity stays constant, and agility, and being open to learning what you do well and what you have not done well, and be open to making those adjustments versus bullheaded and thinking, well, I'm just going to continue doing what I've always done.
hey,
Um, okay.
yeah, that's a great way to be the last person to sell a digital, an analog gauge, just which was the newer version of the last person to make a buggy whip. I mean, it's just sure, go ahead, have a good time with that. And I think that soft landing then provides opportunity if you're aware and agile and aggressive enough. The consensus is also that inflation is going to continue its gradual descent. And they mean through the year. I disagree. I think we're going to see deflation continue with mild descent, but it's not going to last through the year. I think later in 26, we're going to start seeing some inflationary pressures. Nothing to get us overly excited, but it means the Fed. The other thing, the consensus thing is that central banks continue to ease policy. I think we're going to get to the latter part of this year, third, maybe fourth quarter, and the central bank's going to see more inflationary pressures, and they're going to go, no, we can't keep lowering interest rates. If the Fed remains politically neutral to the extent that they can, there's always political pressure, but this Fed has been like previous ones and been largely politically neutral. If all of a sudden we find a hack in the Fed's chair's position, then we could find some really disastrous things occur
Mm.
that could really have a negative impact on the economy. Loosening uh, policy, lower interest rates, more money in the system, while inflation's coming, just because you want the economy to grow faster than inflation so that people will love you when you get to reelected, and therefore you keep your thumb on the chair's uh, head to say, lower interest rates, more money so that they love me so I can get elected and keep this thing going, you're just going to explode the ship. It's just it's just a
Mm.
disastrous concept.
Self-serving versus focused on the true benefit of the economy for the nation.
Yeah, thinking of people instead of self. You know,
Yeah. Yeah,
maybe things of, the nation.
lessons we try to teach our kids, just stuff like that.
Yeah, stuff like that. That's right. So I think if our listeners understand there will be some more disinflation, deflation, but it's going to be very modest and it's not going to last through the year. They can learn from the end of 25 and go, all right, inflation was coming down. How did that benefit me? How did I take advantage of it? Was lowering a price point worthwhile? Did it work? Did I find that I lowered it too much, too little? They can ask themselves those questions. And then they can look back earlier and go, when inflation starts again later in 2026, they can ask themselves, all right, I was slow to recognize it last time. Listen to us. We'll talk about when inflation's going to be there and stuff. And what do I need to implement first and second and third, because last time I was slow and I just kind of stumbled over the threshold into inflation. What I got to have a more orderly approach and learn from the past. Um, it's a wonderful thing. It's when the global economy, the U.S. economy and the global economy came out of the Great Recession in 2009. People would say, "What do I do?" We go, well, look back at 2002 and ask yourself, what did you not do that you wish you had done? And what did you do that you thought, well, that was stupid? And, learn from your own past. And that'll help you a lot with your own future.
Yep. Yep. I
So,
like it. Today us is hopefully better and smarter than yesterday us.
yeah, that's really true.
I make it a goal of mine. My team back when I had a full-on team, I would say that quite often. Today, Kim is always smarter than yesterday, Kim. But that's if you're someone that's always looking for opportunities to learn and grow.
Yes, and that's what you have to be, right?
Yeah.
Looking for opportunities to learn and grow. And if you think you already know everything, which is not uncommon, um, then you're not doing that because you already know everything.
Yeah.
That's just odd. Let's talk about China as an economy, and then let's talk about something that is kind of dark. Okay. We're going to put
Okay.
dark in the middle here.
Okay. I like it. It's a
Uh,
sandwich.
yeah, it's a sandwich. Again, the consensus from the visual capitalists is that China is going to lean into exports and manufacturing because they're facing deflation, which is hard on the economy. There's a property crisis still in place. There's slower domestic growth. There's population issues going on. So the thing that they can turn to as a natural pivot is to be more aggressive with exports. And if they're going to be more aggressive with exports, that means more manufacturing going on. And they use more uh, robotics for manufacturing than we do. I mean, we people tend to talk, and it's still true. I'm not dismissing what people say. We have this mental picture of long lines of tables with people sitting there, but China's using an incredible amount of robotics now too.
Mm.
We export some of our robotics to China. Um, it's an important market. So in any event, it's natural that they would do that. That has an impact on the United States because if they're leaning into exports, that means they're an increased competitor of ours as we look to sell to the rest of the world. And if they're increasing their manufacturing and they're very efficient, and it becomes a more solid supply base, then it raises the question of why would people feel that same urge to come back? It was the supply chain disruption after COVID that has had a lot of people going, we got to come back, we got to come back. It's the aggressiveness in corruption. It's the IP. But if China all of a sudden can provide something, and it's not stealing American jobs, I may scream the next time somebody tells me that. But if they can make a something like China now sells electric cars more than Tesla sells electric cars. If they can do that, and it's accepted by the public, and it's accepted as safe, and it's acceptable in whatever way a buyer wants it to be, that puts real strain on U.S. manufacturing. Uh, and it's not because they're throwing cheap labor at it, it's because they're throwing a lot of automation as well as cheap labor at it. And if they can prove that they're a solid base, I think that's something that people listening to us need to keep aware of. China, don't count China out yet. And I looked at the numbers. In 2024, their exports were a record high. I didn't break it down by country. The next highest was in 2022, which was a phenomenal year of exports out of China. And in 2024, they surpassed that.
Mm.
So they're fighting back. And we can throw whatever tariffs we want on them. What I was reading is that they exports to the, and I did not verify this. What I read, I didn't actually see the numbers, so that exports to the United States may be down, but exports to the rest of the world are up even more.
Mm.
So they're going, fine, if you want to play that way, we'll just take your customers in Europe, we'll take your customers in the Middle East and in South America, and we'll meet you on the battlefield there. And
Yeah.
interesting, don't you think?
Yeah. No, and that's something definitely that people should take time to look through, think through, scenario plan for, come up with a few what if scenarios. Because if you can't compete on price, and if the stability is there, then people are going to opt for the lower price, especially with everything else that we've been talking about, inflation and everything else. And just even thinking from a consumer perspective, it's cheaper, a lot cheaper to buy things from China than it is from here. So the consumer, if things are still flowing freely, would opt to purchase the Chinese good more.
Right.
Mm.
And just to be clear, I'm not saying this is going to continue for a decade. We're talking 2026 and
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
2027 through the near term. I think longer term, the world's a dangerous place and there's going to be lots of changes in the next decade, especially. And towards the end of this decade, it could quickly fall apart.
Does this
But
get us into our darker stuff?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It was a good segue.
yeah. This is where it gets fun.
The
Uh,
world falling apart and start.
well, this is called is gray zone provocations, an increase in gray zone provocation. So I looked up more of what that means. And it means that a China-Russia alliance, which may or may not include India, that's still an if. Sometimes India seems like they're going that way, sometimes they don't. So let's leave them out. Let's say they remain neutral. And Russia is really a small player, but they have lots of oil. China needs lots of oil, so that's a partnership that works. The thought process there is that China and Russia are going to test the US in subtle ways. We've become very militaristic. We've become pushy, and that they will poke here in Northern Europe to see what we do, that they will go be more active in the South China Sea to see what we do, and that they will uh, do things in the Arctic and see what we do. And they'll do things on the seafloor. They'll do things in orbit. They will do things in cyberspace. And as I do all those things, poking and prodding to see how we'll respond, test our defenses and our resources, um, I think that what they're doing there is getting ready and distracting us, draining our resources. It'll take their resources too, but if they can find the weak spots, I think it's a change in the world order. The You don't remember the Cold War, though you were alive for part of it, but the no, you weren't. I remember the Cold War very dramatically. This isn't the Cold War. This is much more active than the Cold War. Um, and it may be done through proxy, but it's an escalation in the tensions between one superpower, China, and the U.S., the largest superpower on the planet.
Do
And
you think any of those pokes and prodding would be known to the general public or just at the government level?
I think they could be known to the general public, but they'll be dismissed
Mm.
as well. That's the Arctic. Who cares about Antarctica? That kind of things because there's a limited view of the world. We know from people that we know that cyber activity is huge.
Mhm.
And if you want a trigger for war, you bring down somebody's uh, internet is too small a word for it. You bring down their whole system of communication. You bring down the whole banking system. You bring down everything that we now come to depend on. Much like a hacker would do until you pay the bribe, pay the ransom. If you can do that to segments of the country, you're going to get a military response, buddy. You
Yeah,
know?
that would wreak havoc. I can only imagine because it wreaks havoc in my house when a snowstorm takes it out of my house for like 6 hours.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine the response when it'd be on a greater scale because everything in life is just so dependent upon all of that.
Yeah, and all that stuff can occur behind the scenes and not get reported. And when it finally gets to be more visual, it could be one of those things that can quickly escalate into, you better stop that,
Mm,
make me
yeah.
kind
So
of
when
thing.
do you imagine that? So you said gray zone provocations increases. Is this something that, so we were previously talking about 2026. Is this something that you think would start as soon as 2026? Like these types of conversations are going on and just expect them to increase over the next 10 years? Like what are your thoughts there?
I think it's already started,
Mm,
and it's just going to increase as we go forward. And then we don't call them an enemy yet, but I think someday China is likely to become uh, aggressive. So at some point, I think China is going to say uh, the U.S. will not respond if we do X because they're tired or they don't have the political will. The people won't see this as so important anymore. So all of a sudden, China is going to do something militaristic. not that we ever would. And they're going to say, we're not worried about the United States. Then you go to the next one and you go to the next one and do those different things until you poke the bear one more time and something larger unfolds from there. But in the meantime, they've gained an economic or political or military advantage in different areas. Um, it'll be interesting. Let me give you, for instance, when we don't need Taiwan's chips manufacturing anymore, and there will come a time when we don't if China waits long enough. Then China decides to reclaim Taiwan, and I use that because that is their view. They're reclaiming Taiwan, even though Taiwan has now said they're a sovereign nation. China views them as China. They're going to reclaim Taiwan. If we don't need them anymore, would we go to war? That sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, no, that's a great example. How then does this information translate to the business owner folks that are watching our show? More than, is this just a heads up, something to be paying attention to, watching? Are there any other considerations that our audience should take into account listening to this?
Yeah, I think so, Kim. And thanks for bringing us back to reality instead of my theoretical world where I so happily live.
I think it's fascinating and certainly good information to keep track of. And I always leave these talks and episodes and talk to Frank about. I'm like, guess what my dad was telling me about on today's episode? And so it'll make great conversation for lunch, and then share it with Brittany and James and everybody else, which is good sharing of information people don't spend the time thinking on and are surprised by when something does happen. So I think it's good that you do spend time processing and we can share this information with people that want to listen to us.
Well, happily, we can do that. And I want to tie this discussion with the previous one about China wanting to be more of an exporter, more manufacturing, and to be a more stable supply base. It could be easy to let our guard down, and our guard not being just a country, but a business owner going, all right, let's calm down. We don't need to worry about sourcing from the US. China is good. And while all this is going on over here, you're just looking and seeing the smiling, pretty face over here and not the ugly stuff going on. And that's how you're going to get nailed when all of a sudden this thing starts to get rough.
Yeah.
And either more tariffs or shipping lanes get disrupted or whatever it happens to be. So you, as a business owner that are sourcing from around the world, better be sourcing from friends as well. You can source from China, but you better be sourcing from friends outside of the Asian area because that's the first area where you're likely to see a reaction. So uh, brush up on your Canadian French, brush up on your Spanish, Portuguese, brush up on your contacts in Europe, and make sure that you have those relationships in place. It's not just theoretical. Keep them active because it'd be easy to be lulled to sleep by China if you're not paying attention to the gray. I think that's the takeaway there.
I love it. I like it. It ties the two together very nicely.
Good.
You passed.
All right. So I want to talk about something else that's I think is good news, and then well, let me talk about oil first. Then we'll go to I want to end on good news, if it's all right with you.
Sure. Sticking to our sandwich.
That's right. Yeah. People used to ask me, how do you sleep at night? I go, pretty well. Good.
Well informed.
Well informed. Yeah, well, I try to be. Uh, let's talk about oil. And I don't want to get anybody all excited about this Venezuela thing going on. Okay, but I want to put some reality into it. Alrighty. Um, there's all kinds of lessons to be learned historically and some thoughts that can be projected, perhaps brought into the future. Our move on Venezuela to capture a narco terrorist, I think is what he's called, is not without precedent. All right, that's happened before in the past. The part that I'm nervous about is when we hear the president say we will run Venezuela for a while and we're going to develop your oil industry and and we will be paid back for that. But we will be running the oil industry, which is the largest known oil reserve in the world. They're lousy producers because what was the current regime up until 2 days ago, 3 days ago, whatever. And the regime before that were horrible, and the entire oil infrastructure was falling apart. They were a noted provider, now they're a minuscule provider.
Mm.
But if we can go into Venezuela and say, we're going to run you for a while and do the oil thing, this was brought up to me. So this is not my thought, but it has made me think about it. I can't get it out of my head. If China decides to take Taiwan back, they can look at us and go, are you hypocrites? Do you think we shouldn't take Taiwan back, but you can go to Venezuela? Really? Hmm.
I don't know. I'd have to know. I'm not in the weeds of the situation, but I'd have to know more in regards to what is like we're going to run you for a while. Like those words in and of itself sounds terrifying. Like we can just go into another country and take over and say, we're going to run you for a while because we can do it better than you. Sounds really weird to me. But if it's we're providing you support, like I think like with the islands that have hurricanes and we send all these people down there and we build their homes back and we build their schools back and we give them like support. So I guess I don't know if it's an apples to apples comparison because I don't know the level of detail underneath each header.
Yeah, it's not the benevolence of Red Cross coming in.
Hmm.
And some people want it, some people don't. But it's a crossing into a sovereign nation and deciding that we will tell you how to do things for a while is not unprecedented. But in this age, uh, I think it could give nations a reason to look at us and go, uh, the U.S., that's a sovereign nation. Do you really have the ability to go in there with a sovereign nation that has not attacked you and decide that you're going to do this? And then have China maybe say, world, look at them. Look at them. You think we're bad? Look at them.
Hmm.
It'll be interesting, I think, to see how that plays out. On the oil front, I and I want people to understand, they probably already do. So maybe I'm stating the obvious. The infrastructure, oil infrastructure in that nation is horrible. The estimate I read was that it would take $50 billion to get it back up to where it should be because it's been 50 years since they did the pipe work that's necessary and brought equipment into more modern capabilities and all the rest of that. And the president has said that U.S. oil companies are going to be moving in to make that happen. They may. He may have had those conversations already. As far as I know, as of last week, I hadn't read of a oil company in the United States saying, "Yeah, we're happy to do that," but they may.
Hmm.
What I want people to note is that all takes time. So I'm afraid people will be hearing that, yeah, we're going to bring oil back online out of Venezuela. So instead of producing less than 1 million barrels a day or around 1 million barrels a day, we're going to bring them up to 10 million barrels a day, and that'll help oil prices, which will help American consumers. I want everybody listening to me to go, if they hear that, to say that is pure, unadulterated BS.
Hmm.
Doesn't work that way. It takes years, years to rebuild an oil infrastructure. And if you increase their output by tenfold, if you increase their output by 20-fold, will it guarantee that oil prices are going to go down? No, because you don't know what's going to be happening in the rest of the world. And you don't know what other economic disruptions can be occurring in the Middle East and whether oil is flowing out of Saudi Arabia. There's so many unknowns. You cannot say, well, this will bring oil down. This is why it's worthwhile. It'll help the American consumer. BS. We don't know that. We only hope. Or is the end game really the oil reserves? 18% of the world's known energy reserves are in one country, the largest in the world. Is that what this play is all about? That all of a sudden that's a power card. We control not only the largest producer of oil in the world being the United States, we now control the largest oil reserves in the world. and oil is extremely important, extremely valuable. Are we doing a long-term stability play? Are we being benevolent? Are we going to try to make the American people think this is somehow immediately beneficial to us? It's pretty amazing. I don't know. When you hear that they are a major source of fentanyl into the country, reading from the authorities on the issue, that's not true. When you read about cocaine and other drugs coming into the country, they are a source, but there are lots of countries that are a bigger source of drugs coming into this country, like Mexico, like Colombia. So, I mean, the thing that makes me keep coming back to is if it wasn't for the oil, would we be doing this? And what's the play here? Interesting to see how this plays out. We don't have enough information yet, but just everyone, please, this is my opinion, not Kim's, and not anything official. My opinion is we don't know what's going on here, but do understand there is no quick fix to the oil problem. There is no guarantee that this is going to be beneficial in the long term to the U.S. consumer. The spot oil prices may come down a little bit. When I checked the other day, they'd gone up while all this was going on, and other times they go down. Spot oil prices are not the long-term settled prices that you're going to be seeing at the gas station. So just be careful what you believe. Be careful about swallowing what is being fed to us because I don't think we know what's behind the curtain yet and what's really going on.
It certainly seems like there's a lot of ifs and a lot of unknowns in all of that. So I guess from a business owner's perspective, is my main, I mean, I'm a small business owner, is my main takeaway at this point just to sit back and watch. It doesn't directly impact me and what I'm doing at this moment in time. It's just more of a thing going on in our nation that I can keep an eye on more for awareness, or is there some other takeaway that business owners should have when looking at the situation?
I think that's a good way to put it, Kim. Uh, Again, in terms of more of a vision, that small business owner can be saying, okay, if this devolves into an unstable environment, will I be okay? Am I able to fly under the wire? Because an international company faces a lot different standard than somebody who operates in Minnesota. You
Yeah.
know, so it is different. But it can have an impact on labor, it can have an impact on taxes, it can have an impact on, you know, different areas. But it also says, I think my little unwarranted soliloquy could be maybe I should be figuring out how to do more business in the defense industry.
Mm.
Lots of inlets, especially for set asides, small businesses, minority, women-owned businesses. If you can get to be a 46% owner in a set aside company, you're going to be doing good business in the years to come. So maybe that small business wants to buy somebody that's already in that industry as a set aside or start a business that's a set aside so that you know you're going to have contracts coming in. It's not as easy as I just said. It takes work and you got to jump through the hurdles and all the rest of that. But once you get there, it's a nice feeding trough.
That's a good takeaway. I like it.
Okay. All right. Now
It's smiles, right? We're moving on to the happy side of the
this is
sandwich.
it. This is it. The big finish.
I've been waiting.
I know. I'm sorry. All right. This source for this is the IMF, International Monetary Fund. Okay. The IMF. Foreign, and it's about foreign direct investment, FDI. I've been tracking FDI for years. It's an extremely important indicator of how the world views a nation. And if they think we're going down the tubes, foreign direct investment doesn't go to the United States, right? It's like, why would I do that? And foreign direct investment is not a government investing in the U.S., it's a business investing in the U.S. by way of joint venture, acquisition, or moving a facility, their own business to the United States or part of their business, like we've seen happen in the airline industries and such. Okay. Uh, in recent year, the Mexico, I'm reading so I don't screw it up. India, Mexico, and Brazil, and some other emerging economies recorded strong growth in the receipt of FDIs, and that makes perfect sense. India, especially, makes perfect sense to me. Mexico, I got it. Brazil, I don't get, but that's okay. But it's saying the world is saying, yeah, Mexico's got a good future here. India's got a future here. But the number one nation in the world that has extended its lead to the top of the list for destination by more than it did before is the United States of America. So world's businesses are saying, despite everything, we got to be doing business in the US, not just selling to the US, we got to be in the US because, and the list of reasons is, to me, is impressive. It's where the consumers are. It's where there's a good set of laws that help us, protect us, and guide us. Taxes are reasonable, and the labor is educated, and resources are plentiful. And we have perhaps one of the top ones would be we have a financial system that we can count on that will support us. So the United States, I painted some dark things, but the United States is still the shining light. And I want to be no other place than the United States as we go through whatever's ahead the next 20 years, which exceeds my lifespan, but that's okay. It's
Maybe.
maybe, yeah. Uh, I think it's just important to keep that in mind because I can get carried away into the gray and I can get carried away into the what ifs. And I think there are some massive changes coming. But at the same time, we're still the United States of America. And I'm going to tell a quick story of a cab driver. It's one of my favorite stories from my work years. And he was not from the United States. I asked him why he came to the United States. And he said, he was thoughtful for a moment. He said, "Look out the window, Alan," in his language, broken English. And he says, "Tell me what you see." And we were in Washington, D.C. I remember exactly where I was. And I said, "I see people, lots of people." He says, "Look again, look harder." I said, "I see lots of people." He says, "That's why I love this country. Those people are not all the same. They have different, and it's, you can tell by looking at them, different religions, they have different races, you got different, oh, they're all different people out there. But in America, you see people. And just, so despite everything that we hear, this fellow recognized that we are a nation that sees people, and that's a real plus. So we're on our way to Reagan National, and I said, "What else? It's got to be more than that." He says, "Yeah, we're actually going by the Pentagon," and he says, "We're a nation of laws in this country." He says, "In my country, if a general wants to do something illegal, a general can do something illegal. Nobody's going to stop him. In this country, general leaves the Pentagon and he breaks the law, he's going to get arrested." He says, "I love this country." You know what? He's not wrong. Some get away with it, but generally the rule of law works. And then as we're pulling into the airport, I said, "What else? Quickly, I got." He says, "In this country, I can do what I want. I'm a cab driver because I like being a cab driver. And if I want to do it here in Washington, that's up to me. If I want to do it in Massachusetts, I can move to Massachusetts. Nobody's going to tell me where I can live. Nobody's going to tell me what I can't be. I can become an X-ray technician if I want to. Where I come from, it doesn't work that way."
Mm.
And, uh, he says, "This country is the greatest country on earth." And that was a few years ago, but it's still true. And I think we need to remember that as we go into 2026. It's going to be tumultuous. There's going to be headlines. We're going to go, "What the heck is going on?" And we're going to be questioning ourselves, but we got to remember underneath it all, we the people are America, and it's a good place to be.
That was a great note to end on. Good job. You brought it all back. No, I love that. And I think, I mean, and not just for 2026, your book, Prosperity, said that this decade, tumultuous was the word that you guys used in the book for, so the second, like as we're going through the second half of this decade. And so I think in my mind, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that advice that you just gave applies not just to 2026, but the entire remaining half of the 2020s.
Exactly so.
There'll be different potholes and they'll have different looks and feels to them. And we'll be like, well, that kind of slammed the vehicle a little bit, but there's still opportunities if you see the potholes in advance and to appreciate the country in which we do live in.
Yes, and there have always been potholes. We tend to gloss over them from the past, but there's always been potholes. And if you haven't read, if Neil Howe's The Fourth Turning or and The Fourth Turning is Here, uh, one of his suppositions, which makes a lot of sense, and he proves it, I think, well historically, is that when we get into the 2030s, there'll be so much pressure, uh, economic, global changes, all kinds of things, that we're going to see what appears to be a very fractured nation unify again, because that pressure will cause us to have to unify in order to get through everything that's ahead of us.
Mm.
And I'm counting on the millennials and the Zs uh, to respond to that in a favorable way. Will it be a way that I might recognize as a baby boomer? Maybe not, but that's not the point, is it? Because we baby boomers are different than the silent generation, which is different than the generation before that. We may be a different kind of unity, but there will be a unity again as we go forward.
Yeah. What was the name of that book again, just for the audience, for those who are listening in?
Sure. Neil Howe is the author, and The Fourth Turning is the first book. He co-authored with somebody else or two other people perhaps on that one. Then The Fourth Turning is Here is the book after that.
Okay. And before mentioning that, when we were talking about the potholes and you made the comment that they've always existed, and we kind of forget that sometimes. I think that circles us around nicely to where we can wrap up today's episode on learning from past mistakes or learning from past bruises, um, and past opportunities, maybe missed or captured, and just take some time to reflect and see how you can apply that to 2026 and beyond. With 2026, as you were saying, economically being some areas are going to have better growth opportunities, while others are going to be hit harder because we're looking at a general consensus of a soft landing in economic activity this year.
Yes. And can I add one more?
Please.
If you're a leader of the business or in your business, it would be, I think, extremely beneficial to look back over the last year and go, where did I make mistakes and learn so that you won't make the same mistakes in 2026. You and your company will be better off forward. And if you look back over 2025 and said, I didn't make any mistakes, ask somebody close to you. They'll be happy to.
Ask your spouse.
Yeah.
There's usually a long list when I do ask.
It's a year to improve and to learn from what we did in the past, which was a theme of this, and to improve on the future.
Exactly. Well, thank you for the different topics for today's episode, and I look forward to getting together next week for us to continue on with some new topics.
Yes, I'm looking forward to that too. I'm sure we'll get down into some more fun as we go forward.
Roll up our sleeves.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. And Dad, as always, really nice to see you, and I will talk to you later.
Yes, daughter, you certainly will. Bye now.
Bye.